There are a number of homeless veterans that are using your parks, who served in Iraq, who served in Vietnam. If you're not going to spend money to provide homeless shelters for veterans, and yet there are members of this city council that want to spend millions upon millions of dollars for a bailout for the Vikings, there's an incongruity there.
Previous to the interaction with the police, actually, I met with our city attorney and folks from the police department because we knew that Occupy Minnesota was going to become more active and potentially, try and find a place to be on one of our public plazas.
I think that this resolution is a solution in search of a problem. We have had sufficient regulation, and we need some regulation, but we have had sufficient regulation for years, as folks have noted. But I think it's not just unnecessary, I actually think it's just wrong.
The plazas shall be available for the use and enjoyment of the public between the hours of 6 a.m. and 12 midnight. Outside of those hours, the plazas shall be available only for the purpose of traveling through the plaza without delay. Use of the plazas for camping, sleeping, or any living accommodation purposes is prohibited. This prohibition includes preparations to sleep, such as setting down bedding or laying down on the ground for purposes of sleeping. And 4, personal property or possessions may not be left unattended or stored on the plaza. Any unattended or stored personal property or possessions may be removed pursuant to MCO 427, that's Minneapolis Code of Ordinance 427.100. And 5, no portable toilets or cooking or fire building devices are allowed on the plazas except as specifically allowed in a permit issued under city ordinances subject to any conditions specified therein. And after being served with a notice of trespass, if a person remains on or is found on the pertinent plaza in violation of the notice of trespass, the person may be arrested for trespass. That is the resolution.
I am not interested in limiting anybody's right to free speech. I am concerned about public use in a city where we have 380,000 people that live here, 150,000 people that work in our downtown every day, and 32,000 people that live in our downtown. And when you have a city, you have to balance the interests of groups. We have to get along with our neighbors. And this is an attempt to provide for access for everyone to our public spaces.
Their actions not only have an effect on, say, people from the Occupy movement, but they have dire consequences for our homeless community.
Just about a week ago, I witnessed the Minneapolis Police Department harass a homeless individual on the streets of Minneapolis. I think you all need to take greater care to think about those who have been disenfranchised by the system.
I used to walk my dog along the Mississippi River. She's now deceased, but I often encountered homeless people living in tents right on the banks of the Mississippi River. That kind of helped open my eyes to the fact that people need a place to live.
Peavey Plaza is one of the few safe places that homeless people such as myself can go to have a good night's rest without having to worry about rapists or thieves or other elements in our society.
And especially at a time when we're seeing an uptick in rape in Minneapolis, that we have to have a safe place for especially women who happen to find themselves homeless to sleep at night.
And I reject the thought that it is a safe place for a woman to avoid rape, to be sleeping out on a public plaza. That is insanity. We have supported in this city, through our dollars, through allocations in every budget process since I have been on this city council, 15 years, funding for shelter for folks. Every single year since I've been here, we have allocated dollars for shelter. To put the onus that we don't care about homeless people on us is just incorrect and I think really offensive.
Yeah, essentially Minneapolis is not doing enough to help homeless, especially homeless youth in this city. I mean, just taking me personally for one, I think that, yeah, they can say that they spend all these money on these shelters and these programs and all of this, but at the end of the day, these shelters and these programs are not really helping these people move on with their lives, solve homelessness. It's not by just throwing money at the problem. You know what I mean? It's not just by throwing money at the problem. It's about asking real hard questions about why people are there in the first place.
This resolution itself is targeting us as American citizens. The First Amendment, as it states, Congress shall make no law. What you all are trying to do is trying to restrict our ability to peaceably assemble, which is one of the things that we have been doing.
The current ordinance for plazas has been in place for a long time, seems to have been acceptable. I haven't heard any major issues with that for a long, long time. This resolution, though it doesn't say so, clearly addresses the Occupy movement, clearly addresses recent gatherings.
I think this is very much aimed at my freedom of speech. And by protecting my freedom of speech, Ms. Johnson, I'm protecting your freedom of speech.
When the country was founded, the common green was a place where people could stand up to the king's injustice. 1776.
It's an organization of 75 peace groups and 14 churches in the downtown Minneapolis area who passed a resolution just last week denouncing the police force treatment of Occupy Minneapolis and urging the council and the mayor's office and the police force to regard the rights of assembly and speech of Occupy Minneapolis.
What we are doing is nonviolent, and what we are doing is of no danger to anyone but the companies that are currently in fear of losing the power that they have at the moment. I don't think it's in the best interest of them to simply scrape us off like the dirt from a shoe.
The work that we've done, specifically around Monique White's case, which is in, I believe, Councilwoman Hofstede's ward, has received support from the majority of City Council and from politicians and public figures around the state. And none of this work that we are doing, which has received so much acclaim and which we're very proud of, would have been possible if four of us hadn't met on Government Plaza in the fall and started talking about whether or not we could do this type of work around foreclosure. If this type of measure had been passed at the time, none of this would have happened.